Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our third conversation in the Equity in Action series. I am delighted to be here with Kristin Driscoll today from Boston Children's. I'm going to start by just giving us a little bit of a background, and then we're going to dive right into the conversation. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, CareerSTAT is the National Fund's national sector healthcare sector strategy. And it's a key part of our work to activate employers to make jobs better. And the peer-led Frontline Healthcare Worker Champion Program is a cornerstone of CareerSTAT. It was on a hiatus due to the pandemic, but it relaunched last year. And we are so excited to recognize 8 organizations who have created good jobs. They're building equitable workplaces and making significant investment in the skills and the careers of their frontline healthcare workers. Equity in Action is our way of inviting you into the conversation. So this is going to be a pretty organic conversation to give you a taste of what the work is that's happening at BCH and how you might be able to think or spark ideas into the work that you're doing in your workplace. There will be opportunities to continue this conversation. You will have the chance to ask some questions here, but if we don't get to those, we can always continue the conversation in our online community of practice, Mobilize. And also we have another section next week just for questions. So I will say a little bit more about that later, but without further ado, let me introduce Kristin Driscoll with Boston Children's Hospital. Yay! Congratulations. You are one of our 4 folks who have elevated from an emerging champion back in 2016, and now you are a full-fledged champion, which is very exciting. And I'm excited to dig into kind of what transitioned during that time and talk a little bit about that journey. But I want to start on the personal, because you and I kind of started around the same time, right? Like our workforce development journey has been somewhat together in our different respective organizations. And so I would just love to hear and revisit about your journey and how you got from where you started your career to where you are now at Boston Children's.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's really exciting to be able to celebrate this work today, and especially with you, Melissa, because we really have walked this path together. But, kind of going back in time, I really started my career in workforce development on, the youth development side of things. I worked in high school and college space, supporting students for internships, and then with first-generation college goers who really had an interest in healthcare. And between those 2 jobs, that's really how I fell into this healthcare space and started to really learn about all the opportunities within healthcare for folks looking to build their career or start their career. So I then had the opportunity to work at within the public schools and worked at a high school in Boston, which was incredible. And I felt like I really saw all of these different pieces of how the different types of participants or learners are part of this whole experience. How high school students go off to college and college off to career, or sometimes have different pieces where barriers that they're facing. So I think all of that to say, was super excited when I was offered this position at Boston Children's back in 2015, and really how to bring all of those elements together into the work that we're doing now.
So exciting. And, it's always interesting to me how, we don't always translate our own personal workforce development journeys into how that might look for folks that we're working with and we're trying to get them into a good job. So I think it's always nice to just take a moment to reflect on our often nonlinear journeys, right? We, often take different paths to end up where we are. So as I mentioned, y'all were previously recognized as an emerging champion. Boston's and you participated in our Healthcare Workforce Development Academy, which was back in, 18, 19, it feels like, maybe 18, 19. And that was a really interesting experience. And I would love to just hear, how your participation, both in the recognition program, in the academy, and some of the relationships that you've made throughout CareerSTAT, how has that impacted Boston Children's workforce development journey?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I know, kind of wild to think about how long ago it was and all the things we've been through since. But when I was offered this opportunity at Boston Children's, there had been a gap in time in terms of people that had come before me, and there was a lot of rebuilding and a lot of sort of realignment to, where is the Boston Children's enterprise now? What are the needs? What are both our participant needs? What are their community member needs? But what are the organizational needs in terms of what are those hot jobs, right? So Boston Children's had really been very focused on supports and efforts around incumbent workers, which we know from all of our best practices, that's really one piece of the whole puzzle. And so I think when I found out about the, emerging champion, the CareerSTAT Emerging Champion opportunity, I thought, wow, this could be a really great way to align ourselves to, a template and really a framework for how this work can and should be done. And so when I was offered the chance to apply for the academy, I thought, wow, this is just incredible timing. I should say in Boston, there's no lack of hospitals, and I had no lack of mentors from the other institutions, which was just incredible. I think to have supports from people that are leading and doing this work at other organizations, who were, people are like, oh, a competing organization? Yes, because we're really all in this together, and we're all trying to figure out, how do we engage underrepresented talent, untapped talent, people who don't know about healthcare. I mean, all the people. We want all the people to come to healthcare. So how can we connect with, peers within our geography to work together? So having the opportunity to be part of the academy, I think, was really a catalyst for a lot of changes that were to come. So I think that was 2018-ish. And that was really, I think, a big moment, a turning point for Boston Children's. I think a second turning point was when we started to build our staff. I was originally a team of one, and we went, in 2019, we went up to a team of 4, which was incredible. It felt like, we were just this huge team that could get so many things done now and have so many connections with folks and start to really think about what is possible and what could be. And, of course, the pandemic hit, and that was an additional, sort of challenge. But I think since that time period, we've really worked to, grow our incumbent work. We have an additional piece now where we're focused on internal mobility. So really a continuum from English for speakers of other languages up to when you are ready to go back to school or thinking about what your transferable skills are, but then making that tactical job move. That's a huge, set of offerings that we have now. And in addition to that, our community and youth work, where we're proactively working now with community-based organizations to either run training programs or to do ad hoc, sourcing of for community talent that wants to work at Boston Children's, and how can we make those really strong connections?
Yes. I mean, how exciting. So there's a couple of things there I'm going to lift up. One, I love the way that you describe workforce development as a puzzle, right? There are many moving parts. And oftentimes when we're making the case to leadership, sometimes they can see a singular way to solve a problem or address something that's happening. And what we know through this work is that there is no one easy fix. Right? There are a lot of fixes, and some of them can be easy, and some of them take a lot more time and dedication and evolve over time. But the reality is that we got to try many things to solve these problems, because there's not one thing that's causing the challenges that people are facing, right? So we have to be willing to navigate what those challenges are and step up and figure out how to support folks to be able to get in the door, right? And then up the ladder, as we often speak. This team growth, amazing, right? I was always very impressed with the one woman show that was Kristin Driscoll, right? And how you were able to do all of that. But there's something there about demonstrating the value and the need. And I wonder if you could dig in a little bit about, like, how'd that happen, right? Like, did you get a grant that, supported some people initially? Was that operations just all in on the value of workforce development? Can you share just a little bit about how you were able to grow the team like that?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the first thing I would say is, I'm almost 9 years, 8.5 years in, right? So that it's definitely been a journey. Like, you and I always say, this is not a 1 year experience. This has been a long time in the making. I think the first initial investment, which was incredible, was from our leadership. Really, I think seeing what is possible, what could be possible, and really taking a really big, bold statement by saying, okay, we want to increase staffing in this area. I think, the second way that we've built our team is certainly through partnering with our amazing colleagues in our development arm of Boston Children's, the Boston Children's Trust. And they've helped us apply for different philanthropy or grants. But then we've also really been so thankful for the support of the Commonwealth Corporation, which is the quasi-public fund in Massachusetts that offers workforce training dollars. So those two most recent things I mentioned have enabled us to grow to a team of 11 now, actually, which is unbelievable to think about the days where, it was just me, and we were also, very focused on our employees, which was the right thing to do at that time. But, I think to be able to move from, focusing on just the incumbent worker aspect of workforce development to now focusing on community, youth, and incumbent workers is pretty amazing. And it's just an incredible group of people that are part of our team that have such a passion and are bringing these ideas and programs to fruition. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Well, congratulations, right? And watch out, world, because, the other thing I just want to highlight is, you mentioned both working with CBOs and with other healthcare providers that are generally considered competition, right? And I would say, in my experience, Boston has a somewhat unique collaborative space there, that y'all have your individual things that you're doing, but you really do come together through your industry partnership or consortium, and really recognize that you all have a collective challenge regionally, right? That even if you are doing things that you all could be at the top of your performance and then still need folks, right? Still looking for folks and still having open roles and needing folks to come into those roles and build those pipelines from K through up, right? And so, I'm just curious, how might some of that negotiation happen, or co-opetition? How does that work? Is it just personalities? Are you all have a shared vision? How are you able to get over some of those elbows out that you often see in sectors around competition and really be able to work towards something that is a common space?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you already said, one piece of it around, common vision. I think that collaboration certainly happens through the Boston Healthcare Careers Consortium, which is, convened by our Mass Hire, Workforce Board, the Boston Private Industry Council. And that is, that has been an incredible experience. I've been the co-chair for the last couple of years with a colleague at a different hospital, and I think being able to be in a group of peers to be able to say, okay, I'm struggling with this vocation. Is anybody else having a challenge with this particular role? To be able to share those strategies, and certainly that's a huge benefit of CareerSTAT as well, because you can leverage that national network. But I think to be able to be part of the consortium, but then also be part of other partnerships that are oftentimes run or led by community-based organizations. Like our longtime partnership with JVS is one example, where for us as a smaller, employee headcount, we're maybe not looking for 15 of a particular job or title, right? We're maybe looking for 2 or 3. So to be part of bigger partnerships and collaborations make it really possible for us to say, okay, this is how we want to participate, but a larger employer might say we need 10 people. So it definitely, it opens doors of opportunity for us that we might not be able to access otherwise. But I think now we're moving into a space with these most recent grants where we've been able to, I think after all these years, we've been able to say, okay, we're going to lead on this one. Who wants to work with us? Which is really cool. So I think it really goes both ways. And I think it's just an incredible community in Boston, and certainly Massachusetts too, but working with the Boston folks the most, to be able to just to ask for help and to phone a friend and say, hey, do you have any strategies that you're using with this particular, job? Anything you can share with me? Now, certainly there's, some boundaries that we need to stick to, but I think in this space, it's really been very collaborative and a really nice rapport that folks have.
Yes, that's very wonderful. And I think, something that the Boston area folks really should be proud of and see themselves as an example of what other folks can aspire to. In some cases, when you put egos aside, right, that you're able to accomplish so much more and have such a deeper impact than when sometimes some of it's ego, right, in the room taking up some of the space. So we have mentioned this in this conversation and many that this, workforce development is a practice. It's a journey. It continues. And I know it feels kind of woo language to some people, but actually I really mean it when I say that. And that there are, with any journeys, you can sometimes take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or you get really good at one arm. So maybe, internal mobility and then bringing in the external mobility, right? And that there's different stages to that work, because also the needs of the organization shift. And because of that, there's always a next phase or a next thing that's coming down. And I'd love to hear, what are you getting really excited about around work that's kind of in progress right now or coming up soon that you're feeling really excited about?
Yeah. And thanks for calling that out around, change. I mean, certainly COVID showed us that, we couldn't have possibly been 100% ready, but I think there was a lot of learnings from that, across all of our programs. But I think the things I'm really excited about, and I think our team is really excited about, are some of the newer things that we've been working on. So we have 2 training programs that have launched over the last 6 to 18-ish months at different, timeframes. We're doing some really interesting things around paid training, where we're, outreach and assessing folks and then hiring them to come on board as temporary staff members while they go through a really structured training model that's a mix of didactic training and on-the-job training. And then, hopefully, everyone who's successful then moves on to open positions in the field that they've trained for. So that's been really exciting. And I think as we think about this COVID recovery has really showed us how we can engage people who've maybe never worked in a hospital before or coming from a totally different industry. How can we train those folks to be part of this, incredible work that's happening every day at Boston Children's? And then how can we show them, what's the future like for that? What are the future possibilities? I think the other element that I would mention is we were granted a proposal that we wrote to build out a role that we're calling the Community Career Navigator, which is an opportunity to really think about both strengthening our partnerships with our community-based organizations, but also how do we think about those relationships with those community candidates, both from the beginning of their application process to when they come on board and that first 6 months of hire. Like many organizations, there's lots of research and articles out there around retention, but we know, from all of these different pieces that there's a lot of challenges right now, whether it be housing, food insecurity, childcare challenges, other things that are coming up for people. We were noticing in our own data that we were losing, some of these community hires to just that, different challenges that folks were facing. So we put this, plan together and applied for funding. So that's been pretty exciting to work on that project. I mean, I will say I'm excited about all the work our team is doing, but I think those are some of the new things that's just helping us think about how we do our work in a different way and helping us to evolve and get to that next level as well.
That's all sounds so very exciting. And it's touching on multiple pieces of the puzzle, right? And there's just
Yep.
something there that can be really exciting when you see how it's fitting together and it's bringing together multiple things. So we are almost to the point for questions. So, all of our viewers out there, if you have some questions, please work on entering them into the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. But in the meantime, I'm also curious around, if there is one of the areas that I know that y'all have really invested is around your data systems. And this is a challenge for many an organization, right? And I think of from meeting scheduling to data tracking, all that is that so often that there are tools out there that almost meet our needs or don't quite, and then we still end up trying to do workarounds or how to get the best report out and some of that. And so I know that it can be really frustrating for folks who are trying to demonstrate that impact, whether that's to their leadership, to their community, to their funders. And so I'd love to just hear a little bit about that process of kind of beefing up your data and what have you been able to do with that data, because that's the part B to data, right? Is people collect it and then it sits in a Excel sheet or a folder. So I'd love to hear those 2 points around how you were able to build some more rigorous data collection pieces, and then how you actually are able to use that and how it informs your work in a meaningful way.
Yeah, so this is, I'm sure the team watching is chuckling because they know that I love this. I love data. I love, we now do a quarterly dashboard and an annual dashboard or report of the work that our team has done. This, I think, was probably by far one of the most challenging aspects of this work, because when you think about, traditional HR and working within human resources, we're focused on, employees, people applying for jobs. There's, many different systems that go into tracking those folks. But I think what's challenging within workforce development is you're tracking employees, you're tracking people who are applying, you're tracking youth participants, you're, maybe tracking events that you're going to, and then you're doing this over multiple years, right? So to your point, it's really not always a straightforward answer on how we do that. We were lucky enough to be able to implement a database back at the end of 2019 that really got us started and away from spreadsheets, and really to start, I know, we love our spreadsheets, but, when you start to get to sort of a level of sophistication where you maybe have a participant who was in your summer jobs program and now they're an employee and they're working with the education and career coach and they're taking a class, it just, you can't really look at this sort of in a longitudinal way. So one of the things that has been just critical for us is, how do we, tracking programs that people are part of, how are they working with us? How are they participating in what we offer? How are we working with them? Are we case noting? Are we writing down, conversations that we have or questions that we answer? And then how does all of that, sort of become something that means something to our executive leaders or senior leaders? That, I think, taking from the tracking to the so what, period, I think is where it's a journey for sure. I think one of the things that I would mention is that we really think about, we sort of had to hone in on, okay, what are the big things that we want to mention, right? How many people completed, how many enrolled, how many completed, what's our percentage there? How many got positions after completing that program, right? And then you kind of get into some of the more nuanced things around, maybe different stories. So we focus on a combination of quantitative results that we share in our dashboard. And then we also focus on qualitative, right? So different highlights that might not be captured by the data, but are really, exciting things that have happened during that quarter, that year. But I think finally, focusing on the people, right? Like the data is really important. We want to be able to show, return on that investment and impact to the organization. But we also want to be able to showcase how we're making, opening doors for individuals and what impact we're having on their life, and how that's, that micro impact, and how does that then filter into that larger impact for Boston Children's. I think people who are at the beginning of that journey will just quickly realize how time goes so quickly, and you realize, oh wow, I've got 100 participants already. I think from FY22 to FY23, we worked with 200 additional people. So we touched in some way, shape, or form over 800 people last fiscal year, and you can't keep track of 800 people in a spreadsheet. So
yeah,
it's definitely, it's a process, and I think folks. It's maybe something that's newer for us workforce development folks, and how to think about telling that story in different ways for different leaders, for different organizations, because everybody's interested in a little different piece of the work you're doing.
Yeah, and I really appreciate how you brought both kind of the metrics and the quantitative stuff that can get some folks, but then also the people stories. And I think particularly when we are touching individual lives in a meaningful way, the impact is so much deeper, but than the breadth of 300 people taking a one-day training course, right? But how do we talk about that? How do we show that? And I think the stories and engaging those folks to share their own story, right? There's just something to be said that I think in historical ways, we talk about those stories, but usually it's somebody else sharing the story on behalf of somebody else, right? And to me, there's just such a more resonant kind of feeling when it's people telling their own story in their own words, and how that changed them and how this impacted their lives. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity for us to go really deep, particularly because of some of the universal challenges that folks are facing. Housing, childcare, transportation, that's pretty much anywhere USA. And when employers kind of figure out and step up to help solve those problems with their workers, right? If they see themselves on the same team together, it's very impressive what can be accomplished in that space of trying to move the needle forward on some of these big, really challenging societal issues that we have. So I appreciate the ability to be able to just toggle between, these are the facts and these are good things. And then these are other ways in which this is really beneficial and shows a lot of depth and, influencing families, right? And multiple people within a household, and all of that really good stuff. And how do we capture it to be able to share it back out? Well, we are close to time. So I do want to say thank you so much for this wonderful chat. I really hope folks who tuned in got some bits and pieces and have their wheels turning. But there's a couple of things that will continue this conversation, as I said. Next Wednesday at the same time, we are having a peer learning connection session, and it's going to have Kristin, it's going to have Jerry, and it's going to have folks from our UHC interview, and they're going to come, and their purpose is coming to talk to y'all, right? So I always like to say CareerSTAT is what you make of it. And so come prepared next week with your questions. If you didn't get them answered today, or you've been just having a nugget in the back of your head thinking about something that you may have heard from the sessions that were hosted earlier this year, this is your opportunity to come and get deeper, right? Deeper into the stuff. How did you actually make this happen? Then we have also our next interview is mark your calendar for May 8th, and that is going to feature Loretto, one of our long-term health, long-term care providers, sharing some very interesting stuff there. And then I also want to holler for y'all to put the dates of September 27th through 29th on your calendars. That's when the National Fund's shift convening is going to happen. That's a really excellent opportunity to come with peers, get back in person and connect. We are going to have a pre-employer affinity day where it's going to be just employers, and we're going to even in that space have some concentrated space for healthcare employers as well. So mark your calendars now. Registration is going to be opening soon, so keep your eyes peeled. And of course, if you are not signed up and a member of CareerSTAT, it is free and easy to do. So that link is in the chat, and I hope to see a few more folks signed in so you can be in the know of all of these things. So thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Kristin, for carving out some time to share some of your story and your journey with us today. And as always, I look forward to continuing this conversation in one space or another. So everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you.